you have it in your country too. Ex-Obama health advisor, U.S. needs to stop panicking and being hysterical about coronavirus. First, I don't know what this person is talking about. I don't see anybody in the United States so far walking around with respirators even, let alone doing anything that would remotely be called panicking. So I'm not sure where this comes from, and I'm not sure how this person ever was qualified to be a health advisor to the White House, because he says here, everyone in America should take a very big breath, slow down, and stop panicking and being hysterical. I think we need to put it into context. The death rate is much lower than for SARS. That's the comparison being drawn. Remember that nice comparison I showed you CNN was giving you? So the health advisor, Ezekiel Emanuel, says the death rate is much lower than for SARS. So let's check that. Let's bring out the old data paddle, see what we can find. Oh, look here, a beautiful chart put out by this user, the JJ Bug, over here on Reddit. Found this just earlier today. Thank you, JJ Bug, for updating these. These are just wonderful charts. Very, very helpful. And so here we're looking at swine flu deaths in red, coronavirus deaths in yellow, SARS in green. And these are not perfectly, purely beautiful exponential curves like you would expect in a pandemic. But boy, this one is. And speaking of the rate of death, I think what we're looking at here is first, the absolute number of deaths on a time series is higher than for SARS and for swine flu. And if it keeps up at this rate, it's just going to totally blow these away and eclipse them. So how does the health advisor not have access to information like this or care enough to find it before they go out publicly and start talking? Part of the reason we're not getting any information out of China is that, you can go to jail for 7 years if you post any. So they've really put a clamp down on all kinds of reporting. And so that's really why we're not getting up the curve of any more information. I haven't seen a single video file from inside a hospital in probably 6 days now. So this is the reason. And CNN, hey, piling on. Had this nice piece here, came out at 11:06 today, said, a deadly virus is spreading from state to state and has infected 15 million Americans so far. It's influenza. I don't know if they're trying to, I don't know what CNN is up to here. But again, by the numbers, CNN, no. nCoV is far worse than the flu. I went over this data yesterday. The case fatality rate, the R0, the serious complication rate. They're not even remotely comparable to each other. And oh, by the way, you might want to know this, Scotty Andrew of CNN, that influenza, when it comes over here, there's an enormous cohort of the population that has immunity, which really helps stop the spread. Nobody has been exposed to this coronavirus. So it's a completely virgin territory for this virus to come and spread across. Continuing on. Here's Bloomberg. Coronavirus misinformation is spreading all over social media. This is the thing that they decided was most important. One set of tweets and Facebook posts from U.S. conspiracy theory accounts said drinking bleach could protect against the virus or even cure it. On YouTube, a series of videos accusing media organizations of suppressing information had hundreds of thousands of views. Well, that's this channel. That's what they're referring to. If you clicked on this link and followed it over, you end up on this channel and the videos I've been producing. And yes, Bloomberg, you got it wrong though. And this is why we don't like you guys in media doing this stuff. I didn't accuse the media organizations of suppressing information. I accused the media organizations of misinforming or underinforming people about something that's very serious. And I stand by that assertion, and I'm going to continue with that. So this is going to be something that I'm going to continue to battle and challenge a little bit, but it's not one of these media organizations has reached out to me to say, can we talk about the data you've got? We have different data. We'd like you to talk with our science people, and we can come to the bottom of why we think you have your numbers wrong. Nah, they're just going to smear these assertions up here, and they've put an accusation against me next to somebody who said drinking bleach would protect against the virus. For the record, my PhD in pathology is from Duke University, and I got a fine medical training there, and I learned a lot about these things. So if any media organization wants to talk science with me, we can do that, and I'd be very happy to do that. That would be wonderful. But the ad hominem attacks really don't float with me. Moving on. I wanted to go a little deeper into why knowing the R naught is so critical. So I just put together a couple of tables here so we can just sort of compare things. Remember, an R naught is asking this question. If during the entire time that I have, and I'm infective with a current virus, a certain virus, what is the chance that I'm going to spread it, and to how many people? Right? So if I have an R naught of 1, in this case we're looking at an R naught of 1 here, if during my infective cycle I might pass it to one other person, so now 2 people have had it, me and the other person, and then they have an R naught of 1 as well, and so, or the virus does, and then they pass it to one person, so there's 3 people have had it total, cumulatively. Me, the next person, the next person. So with an R naught of 1, this thing can persist through, and after 10 hops, after we've gone through 10 of these infective cycles, you have 11 people. That's what an R naught of 1 does. It neither really, it doesn't grow through the population, but it persists. So that's with an R naught of 1. And what's important to note is the flu. The flu that CNN was just so proudly proclaiming is the same, or even more deadly, or something you should worry about more than the coronavirus. That has an R naught of 1.28, which means, and I don't have decimal points in here, so these are all rounded numbers, but look what happens even when we bump from 1 to 1.28. By the end of 10 hops, now there's 15 people, so this is growing, it's persisting and actually growing a little bit, spreading through the population. That's what 1 to 1.28 does it. Now, this is why it's really critical. What do you think happens when we get Spanish flu as an R naught of 1.8? I'm going to bump this next table to 2. Here's what happens when we go to an R naught of 2. Ooh, all of a sudden, because you go here in the first cycle, it gets spread to 4, it gets spread to 8, it gets spread to 16, it gets spread to 32, and by the end of this, by 10 hops, now 2,048 people have been or are currently infected, compared to 15 and 11. That's what the R naught is doing for you. Now let's ask the question, though, what happens if we ran that out to, say, 20 hops? Where does that take us? All right, sorry, this got clipped off a little bit on the side, but 20 hops means that we had R naught of 1, you got to 20, and R naught of 1.28, you get to 178, and an R naught of 2, and you get to 2,097,152. So what happens now when we take that to an R naught of 2.5, which is where we think this coronavirus is? Well, interesting numbers. By the 10th hop, we are now at 23,000 people compared to 2,000 compared to 15. So this 15 to this 23,842, that's what CNN wants you to believe is a comparable statistic. They're comparing a virus where we have herd immunity and which has an R naught of 1.28 against a brand new virus with no herd immunity with at least a minimum R naught of 2.5. They're comparing 15 to 23,842. And if we jump that out to 20 hops, what happens? Well, now, after the 20th hop, we have 227 million and change people that have been infected compared to that 178. So that's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous for CNN to compare that. Now, I want to take you through a little bit of science. If you like science, stick around for this part. It appears that men are far more susceptible to catching coronavirus based on early data. Here's the data and the science behind that. All right, let's get into that science. This is my favorite part. This just came out in The Lancet. By the way, we have these papers coming out. They're not being peer reviewed because there isn't time. They're just being thrown out there. But this is an emergency, and so really wonderful work is coming out really, really rapidly. And they noted here in this study, and this isn't a lot. This is 41 admitted hospital patients, so it's not the biggest sample. But in there, they noted pretty strongly that most of the infected patients were men. That was 30 out of 41. And part of the reason for that may be that the males have a higher ACE2 expressing cell ratio, and I'll tell you what that is in a second, ACE2 expressing cell ratio than all of the other 6 female donors. So this is translated from Chinese, so the English is a little off here and there, but not bad. So 1.66% versus 0.41% of all cells that they took out of the test samples. And in addition, the distribution of ACE2, these receptors, is also more widespread in male donors than females. And this result is highly consistent with the epidemic investigation showing that most of the confirmed nCoV infected patients were men. So this is really interesting. So what is this ACE2 thing? Let's look at this real quick. Angiotensin converting enzyme, ACE, angiotensin converting enzyme. So let's look at what happens with SARS real quick. ACE2 is an enzyme, and it's linked in the membrane, and SARS, this is a SARS virus particle, has these little things on its outer surface bind into that. They bind, they fit perfectly like a lock and key right into that receptor. And then the cell, being a little bit hoodwinked, doesn't know what's going on, finds its receptor full and says, you know what? I'm going to bring that inside and I'm going to recycle that. And when the cell is trying to recycle it, that actually ends up liberating the RNA of the virus so that it can go out and start replicating itself. So it's really critical that this outer coat is binding with this ACE2 receptor. And so this is what a larger vision of what that coronavirus might look like. This is the corona, these spike proteins on the outside. And it's got a variety of things. This is the RNA coiled up inside, which is the piece that's going to replicate it and make a new one of these so that the whole thing can start all over again. So what matters is that these things here, these spike proteins, actually bind to and fit into that angiotensin converting enzyme, a protein that's sitting on the surface of the cell. And those ACE2 receptors are found, not surprisingly, all over the lungs and certain other epithelial tissue. So that's why this thing is really hitting the lungs hard in part. So what is angiotensin? Just so you know, because I like to cover all the bases, and so you just know what the dots are and how to connect them. Angiotensin 2, it's a series of 8 amino acids in a row. Arginine, valine, tyrosine, isoleucine. So if you remember your high school, biochem, if you took it, this is what the molecule ends up looking like. It's just these basic amino acids. A lot of people take amino acids for supplements. Well, that's what these are, critical building blocks for proteins and life. And so I just pointed out what this angiotensin really looks like. So that's what's happening. And so if we back up a bit, it looks like males have a higher angiotensin converting enzyme expressing cell ratio. So they've got more of these things. So they're just more susceptible to first getting infected and second for the infection to spread, because as those virus particles are replicating, they burst the cell, they dump out into the bloodstream, and then those are looking for a new place to go and replicate. So men seem to be a little more susceptible to this, so it makes sense. So we're starting to figure this out. I love that part, knowing what it is, because that gives us a chance at figuring out how to combat it. It gives doctors a better chance for treatment, and it tells us a little bit more about what's going on. So the summary for today: the WHO totally dropped the ball. Hey, it's a big emergency, but not enough to cause us to stop global trade or travel. Thanks, WHO. Way to go there. The media, just as bad as ever on this story right now. I don't understand why, but they're starting to, take pot shots at people who are trying to get the information out there for reasons that don't make sense to me. The China news, really exceedingly hard to get right now. I can guarantee you it's worse than advertised, and that's why they're clamping down on it. The official stats coming out of China, guaranteed, they are bogus, almost certainly way too low. But, we're going to take them and go with them, because what else we got? But this bears repeating over and over and over again. nCoV is worse than the flu, SARS, anything else that's come along since the Spanish flu. All right, I've run a little long today. I hope you stayed through it. I just wanted to get through a lot of material. Thanks for listening.